We're excited today to come to you and bring some of our latest innovations in the way that we're moving forward with technology in the state. My name is Bo Reese. I'm the State Chief Information Officer. And as you all know, we've been going through some pretty exciting changes in the state of Oklahoma around our IT and how we deliver IT services across the state, especially in our executive branch agencies. So today what we're going to be talking about and hopefully presenting to you and answering all of your questions is around the new way that we're presenting the rate model and the way that we bill agencies. This is really part of our natural maturation in the state. We're not the first state to do this, by the way. This is something that, although is very new to Oklahoma, there are several states that may be ahead of us, and there are many states that are behind us and are watching us very closely. And we're all collaborating across the nation to see how we go forward and try to learn from each other's mistakes, right, and not repeat things. And so it's really a good community of effort that we're going through. But this is something that is happening nationally. This is truly a change that you can see across all states. We're excited with what we have to present in Oklahoma. This is something that Matt Singleton, our Chief Operating Officer, who's going to be sharing with you a presentation and walking you through. Matt and his team have worked tirelessly over the last many, many months pulling this together, coming up with what we believe are the right solutions for Oklahoma to meet the needs of our customers, you all. And we take that role very, very seriously. I'm very proud of what they've done, and I'm proud of the team and how hard they've worked, the hours they've put in, because it matters a lot. It matters to you all, and therefore it matters to us. We're only successful if you're successful. So today is going to be about having a conversation. We're going to bring to you what we think is a model that is going to fit Oklahoma's needs, that's going to hopefully fit your needs. And you're going to help us vet that today by looking at the model, looking at the numbers, looking at what we're presenting to you. And we're going to have that conversation. Is this right? Do we need to tweak some things? How does it work? Where does it not work? But that's the conversation we want to have. We've got a whole staff of people here today. Matt's going to introduce to you, and they're going to be here after the presentation to individually answer your questions as well, and make sure that when you leave here today, you have as many answers to the questions as we can get, right? So please bring your questions, make notes during the presentation, make sure you get those answers, and this will not be your last opportunity. We're not going to run away from today and go hide somewhere where you can't reach us. When those questions come up next week or the week after, you're going to know who to reach out to, who to talk to, and how we can come together if necessary to answer even more questions that you may have. So I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate your time and attention. And to be respectful of your time, we'll get things moving. And at this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to Matt Singleton, our Chief Operating Officer, and he's going to present our updated service rates. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bo. Oh, I'm already clearing my throat into the mic. I'm sorry, guys. So we got a few things we're going to do today. I'm going to start with just some housekeeping things, okay? So just quickly, we're going to do some introductions for our account executives. Hopefully when you signed in this morning, you were told who your account executive is, and now you'll be able to put a name with a face. This is important because at the end of the presentation, we're going to break up into small groups, and your account executives have your crosswalk between FY16 and what we think FY17 looks like. So real quick, I'll have our account executives stand up. In the front here, we have Stephanie and Megan, Erica, Sue, TJ, and Mr. David Rose. These are the folks that, and you'll hear me talk about this quite a bit. These are the folks, oh, and there's Melvin. Oh, Melvin, there he is. These are the folks that are the experts when it comes to the information services service catalog. And they will also be the ones who are intimately familiar with your master services agreement. They're going to be great assets for you moving forward. And if you haven't met them before today, I think you're in for a treat. So thanks, guys. We've been talking about a new rate structure for information services for the state of Oklahoma since I came to the state of Oklahoma about 5 years ago now. I'm pretty sure they were talking about it before I got here, so I can't take credit for it. We've had a lot of conversations. I think I've actually had several individual conversations with folks that are in the audience today. So some of this is not going to be new. You're going to hear a lot of the same things, but I think we're onto something here. I'm excited about showing this to you, and I've already been made fun of this week for being excited about stuff like this. But this is a monumental milestone for the IT unification across the state of Oklahoma. And I'll get into some details here, but I'm going to start with kind of laying the foundation of the history. I'm going to identify a few of the objectives that we tried to accomplish through the new rate structure, and then I'm going to show it to you. I think the main thing I want you to take away from this conversation is that it really is a conversation. The rate model is not done yet, guys. We need to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on what you see today. And then as we actually get into the FY17 proposals, you guys are going to get to customize this thing. So, and I'll get into the details here real quick. So the background. So the rates that we're operating under today have not been addressed since 2008 in most instances. In some instances, they have not been reviewed since the late 90s. I think everyone in the room can appreciate that technology has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades. So if you want to think about it in terms of good news, bad news, this is definitely the bad news, right? We've got to go back and look at the rates. The good news is those rates were based on a much smaller population. So back then, the Office of State Finance, if you remember that, was serving about 800 people. Today, we serve well over 31,000. So that's the good news part of this. We have economies of scale that we can now leverage and take into consideration as we do the new rate structure. We are entering the 5th year of the IT unification effort. During the first 4 years, we've saved a ton of money for individual agencies, in excess of $100 million so far, which is fantastic. But in some instances, it's actually increased the operational cost for the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. Again, because those rates have not been adjusted in over a decade in most cases. Additionally, as we've gone through the unifications, we've brought on what we term technology debt. And I'll talk about that in depth here in just a moment, but when the IT Consolidation and Coordination Act was passed, many agencies, and rightly so, came back and said, you know what, I'm not going to invest in IT right now because that's about to be somebody else's problem. And that was fine for the first few years of the IT unification effort, but again, we're starting year 5. 5 years is typically the life cycle expectancy for most infrastructure, and things are getting old. So we need to be able to address that as part of the new rate structure. As we look at some of the driving factors for adjusting the rates, in FY15 we know our operating loss was about $7 million. FY16 hasn't closed yet, but I'm expecting something comparable. So again, we're supposed to be a cost recovery organization, and you'll see kind of how lean and mean we've become over the last 4 years. But we're probably not doing a great job of cost recovery if we've got an operating loss year over year, right? So again, this is a driving factor for making some adjustments. We're spending a lot of staff time working on old stuff. And then the other thing that we're trying to accomplish through this new rate structure is address some of the feedback we receive from agencies, specifically around our invoices. So agencies get a lot of invoices from OMES, especially if they take multiple shared services. So you likely get one invoice each month or maybe multiple times each month from the different divisions within OMES. If we talk just about information services, our invoices are very detailed and all jargon, right? So our agencies, when they look at that, they don't know what some of this stuff means. Honestly, up until recently, some of us didn't know what all those things meant. So we're trying to get to the point where the invoices that you see from information services are in English, and I'm not going to claim that they are at this point. I think they're better, but you guys will be the judge of whether the things that we call things make sense. And that's absolutely one of the pieces of feedback I'm hoping to get from you is, yes, this makes sense. These invoices are becoming meaningful. And really, there's an ulterior motive here, right? So in addition to making the invoices more understandable, I'm hoping that agencies, when they see invoices that they expect and they mean something, will pay faster. Because again, we're a cost recovery organization and we run very lean and mean. When agencies are slow to pay us, payroll gets really exciting. And it's not the kind of excitement that any of us want. So again, we're trying to get things so that they look like agencies expect them to look like. I mentioned technology debt, and you'll hear us talk about technology debt all the time. There's three main areas of technology debt. The first is kind of apparent, right? It's old infrastructure and old software. We used to joke about having infrastructure in the state of Oklahoma that was old enough to vote. And we've been joking about that for so long now that we now have infrastructure in the state of Oklahoma that's old enough to buy liquor. This is absolutely not where we need to be from a technology standpoint. We've got to get better about refreshing this technology and staying on more current technology across the state. There's a couple of reasons for that. So when you're on old infrastructure, a lot of times manufacturers will stop producing what we call firmware. This is the software that controls the individual hardware components in infrastructure. It makes managing those pieces more difficult, and in some instances opens up security vulnerabilities. Security is really a bigger deal when you start talking about old software. When manufacturers stop producing security updates for software packages, we really do increase the risk profile for the state of Oklahoma. Again, that's not a situation that we need to be in. And then also, you look at it, manufacturers don't want you on the old stuff, right? They want to sell you the new stuff. So year over year, they make staying on the legacy equipment and software more and more expensive, trying to make it painful to stay there. So we'll talk about Windows 2003 Server here in just a minute, but it's a great example of this, where Microsoft has stopped supporting Windows 2003 Server. We've purchased extended support. That was last year. This year, we renewed it, and Microsoft more than doubled the cost. I'm picking on Microsoft, but every major manufacturer follows the same model. So we've got to get better about getting current on software. The other thing about software is, as we've done the unification efforts agency by agency, it's become clear that most agencies did not have a software licensing specialist on staff who understood the licensing models and kept track of those software assets. Licenses are just like any other asset. You have to keep track of them. You need to know where they're installed, who's using them. You need to be able to retire them when they're no longer in use or you're no longer paying for them. All that sort of thing needs to happen. These things came to light when we had a couple of major manufacturers come in and audit the state. And at the end of the audit, they said, you don't have enough licenses. Here's a bill for $2 million or $5 million. Again, we're a cost recovery organization. So when those surprises happen, we have to go back to the agencies and have a conversation around, okay, I know you weren't expecting this. We weren't expecting this either. This is a real cost for the state. Let's talk this through. Let's figure out how to cover this. We've got to do better. We've got to get out ahead of these compliance issues. And so you're going to see some things in the new rate model that I think are going to help us get more proactive in how we're not only meeting compliance requirements when it comes to licensing, but really leveraging economies of scale, driving those costs down, and then managing those resources so we can move them around where they're most needed. And as agencies stop using those resources, let's see if we can apply them somewhere else and further reduce costs for everybody. And then the last area that we talk about in terms of technology debt is documentation. You've probably heard us talk about IT people in general do not communicate well. This certainly applies to the written word. We have a lot of customized applications in the state of Oklahoma, and it's not different than any other state. The reason why we have customized applications is because there's folks the next building over that change the rules every single year. It's their job. So because they change the rules, we have to customize the systems that help us adhere to those rules. It's not a terrible thing. What's a problem is when we don't document how those systems work. And if you'll remember, the previous administration took a very regulatory approach when it came to IT consolidation. And they introduced a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in both the agencies and the IT staff that were in those agencies. And quite frankly, they kicked the proverbial anthill, right? We lost an immense amount of institutional knowledge. People just left. And because they weren't documenting what they were doing in these customized applications, it put us in a position where we had to bring in consultants to help us dissect these applications, and in many cases, contractors to help us run those applications, because we didn't know how they worked. We didn't know what they depended on. And again, it's a very costly endeavor. So we've got to get better in terms of how we're documenting these custom applications that we maintain. So those are the three main areas that we talk about in terms of technology debt. We feel like we've addressed all of them with the new rate model, but you'll see I've got a disclaimer on the slide, right? It says this is everything we know about. That's not to say there's not going to be more surprises. I will tell you, I used to be surprised every day and sometimes multiple times a day, but I don't get surprised nearly as often. Those surprises are fewer and further between, and the magnitude of those surprises are getting smaller and smaller. So I think as we're maturing as an organization and as our processes are maturing, things are getting better. What I'll commit to you is we're going to continue to operate like we have. When surprises happen, we're going to come to you and we're going to talk about those surprises, and we're going to figure out a solution together to get the state where it needs to be, but also to help the agencies as much as possible. Some quick stats. I mentioned the IT Consolidation and Coordination Act. The main point of that act was to drive down IT costs across the state. We're starting year 5. We've really accomplished that. What this page shows you is where Oklahoma sits in relation to the national average when it comes to IT cost per employee, IT budget as opposed to the full state budget, and then IT FTE versus state employees. So you'll see we're running significantly below the national average when it comes to all three of those areas. Specifically, we're investing between $22 and $46 million less in IT each year than the national average. And we have 437 less IT FTE than the national average. So you've heard me say a couple times now, we're lean and mean. We are. And we're going to continue to be. We are still charged with reducing costs. We're still charged with leveraging economies of scale wherever possible. So you're going to see us continue down that path. But I think we also need to start talking about investing in IT. There's been numerous studies done at research universities across the nation that show that investing in technology actually reduces costs in other areas. And Gartner, all of these stats actually came from Gartner, but Gartner has posted that for every dollar you invest in state IT, it reaps $3.88 in savings elsewhere. Those are pretty powerful metrics. So clearly we need to start talking about where we invest in IT, and we want you, the agencies, to tell us where you want to invest in IT based on what your mission is and what your immediate needs are. So we'll start talking about that. So here's the updated, what we think the new service model is. So we're going to talk about it in terms of 4 categories. You have Tech Essentials, Tech Plus, Tech Projects, and Tech Maintenance. Tech Essentials is just what it sounds like. These are the essential services that every state employee needs to do their job on a day-to-day basis. It includes things like desktop support and email, user storage, voice, connectivity. All of those things rolled into actually 3 packages. You'll see them here in a little bit. But the idea is we're creating a predictable model for agencies when it comes to IT costs. As your agency increases in size or decreases in size, you know what to budget for IT. Tech Plus is where we start talking about putting the agencies back in the driver's seat when it comes to where they're investing in IT. So Tech Essentials has a lot of services within it, and I'll pick on voice. So Tech Essentials Voice includes a desk set, dial tone, long distance, voicemail, pretty much anything you would really need to do your day-to-day. But some agencies are going to want that executive phone, that executive desk set that has additional programming features within it, or they want that sidecar for the reception desk so they can see who's on the phone and make transferring calls easier. Those are decisions that the agency should be able to make, and they will through Tech Plus. There's some other examples I'll show you here in a minute. Tech projects, this is where we start talking about engaging with our agencies like they expect us to. With any other service provider, you have a statement of work that you execute, right? So we're going to do the same thing. As you identify a need, we're going to come in and say, okay, this is what we think the plan is for identifying the need that you've identified. This is how long we think it's going to take. This is how much we think it's going to cost. We're also, same thing applies for really construction projects or deliverables-based statements of work, right? There's still some agencies that are moving around. There's not as much renovation happening right now, and there's certainly not much new construction happening. But as we go through those types of projects, we're going to identify the number of network drops that need to be provided, the number of wireless access points, those types of things. So there'll be a deliverables-based statement of work. Those are billed based on actuals. As we burn through the hours or as we deliver the deliverables, we'll bill for those in arrears. So you're not prepaying for services. The last category, and this is what I'm really excited about, and I've already had some of our long-term partners making fun of me for being excited about this, but tech maintenance. So this is, for the first time in state history, we are able to show you the total cost of ownership for agency-specific applications. Why is that important? Because now we can start having true business conversations with the agencies around, are you getting the value you expect out of that investment? If you're not, should we be looking at other options? Are there lower cost options that we can show you? And if you want to take one of those options, we can prepare a roadmap to help you get there. Those are the types of conversations that we should be having in the state of Oklahoma. The overall benefits of the new rate model, I think this gets it more into English. So agencies will when they receive their invoices, they're going to understand what they're getting. It's actually a much shorter invoice because we bundled things together. But it's going to make the reconciliation process easier. And I think payments more timely. Again, cost recovery organization, lean and mean, payroll should not be exciting. Tech Essentials gives you that predictable cost per FTE for IT. As you increase headcount or you reduce headcount, you know what IT is going to cost. Tech Plus gives us that customization and being able to select different service levels for different services. Tech Projects aligns us to what you expect when you engage with a service provider. Tech Maintenance gives us that total cost of ownership conversation. There we go. So a little bit deeper dive into Tech Essentials. You'll see we've broken it up into 3 areas. Workstation, network, and voice. We've done that because we need to be able to customize Tech Essentials a little bit. As we started conversations, it became clear that not all state employees use a computer every day. I know that seems pretty simple, but someone had to tell me that. And specifically, it was the Department of Corrections that gave us that aha moment, right? So you have corrections officers that really, they don't interact with a computer on the day-to-day basis. So it doesn't make sense to charge them for workstation support, does it? As we've done these roundtables this week, we've identified other agencies where they may not use voice or they may not use network. So I think we've got the level of granularity we need to customize this. And when you see your FY17 proposal, I think you'll see how we've kind of broken this thing out a little bit. Tech Essentials is based on actual employees. So it's filled positions as of July 1. I know that it says budgeted. It's actual filled positions as of July 1 each year as reported by the budget office. So again, that's a nice point in time. And it's pretty easy to demonstrate if we have employees or not, right? To continue the corrections example, while they may not use computers in their day-to-day, they have shared workstations that they use. They have kiosks that they use for time entry, incident reports, that sort of thing. So while it's not part of Tech Essentials, many of you will see a Tech Plus item for shared workstations or maybe additional machines. For Tech Plus, again, this is where agencies start being able to customize the service offerings. You're going to see things like per seat licensing here. Many of you are doing this already, right? Microsoft Project, Microsoft Visio, Adobe Acrobat Pro, those things will still be available. They'll be in the Tech Plus catalog, and you'll just see them broken out that way. I've already mentioned the shared workstations or kiosks. We also have mobile device management, right? So many agencies are coming to us now and saying, we want to enable a mobile workforce. We now have capabilities around managing those mobile devices so we can ensure that they're secured and that if they get lost or stolen, no data has been lost by the state. Site connectivity, so this is based on that, exactly what it sounds like. So each site that an agency has a site connectivity fee back to get them back to the state network. And so some agencies have one, some agencies have hundreds, but you'll see that as a Tech Plus item as well. And that's really so agencies can customize that based on how many locations they have. Leased workstations, this is a new Tech Plus item. This is something that we haven't really offered in the past. We've had a couple of pilot programs, but we're prime time for FY17. You can now lease your workstations. We can actually lease a lot of stuff, but specifically for Tech Plus, we're talking about endpoints. So desktops, laptops, tablets, you can now operationalize those costs and not have to worry about going and finding capital every 3 to 5 years to refresh those units. For FY17, it's a Tech Plus item. I'm hoping we're going to get enough adoption that it makes sense for us to roll that into Tech Essentials, because I'd really like to get to the point where we're refreshing desktops, laptops, and tablets on a regular basis, and the agencies don't need to worry about that anymore. And then the last thing I'll point out here is the regulatory compliance offerings. So not all state agencies have to be at the same compliance level, right? Different agencies have different compliance requirements. We talk about IRS 1075 or FERPA or HIPAA or PCI, CJIS. I know I've thrown a bunch of acronyms at you. Hopefully some of them sound familiar to some of you. But not every agency has those requirements. So rather than trying to secure everyone to that same level and increasing everyone's cost, we said let's do a base offering, which you see in Tech Essentials. And then as agencies have those compliance requirements, they can opt in for those tools to allow them to meet that level of compliance. I'll show you CJIS here in a minute, the Criminal Justice Information Systems compliance needs. There's a couple of law enforcement agencies in the audience, so you guys will get a kick out of it. The rest of you, bear with me because I'm just excited about it. We've made some tremendous progress in this area over the last few months as part of the CJIS Center for Excellence that's being constructed in Edmond right now. So some very exciting things happening when you talk about IT and law enforcement. Tech maintenance, again, this is to allow us to have that total cost of ownership conversation. It includes all of the costs to support that application. There's a caveat, I'll get to it in just a second. But we talk about the server costs, the storage costs, the platform licensing costs, and when I talk about platforms, it's the operating system, SQL licensing if it's a database, Internet Information Server if it's a web-based application. Those types of things are all rolled into the application maintenance line that you'll see on your FY17 proposals. It also includes all of the labor to support those things. So again, we're getting to where it's a total cost of ownership for that application. The caveat is for FY17. And the caveat is why we're having this conversation the second week of July instead of a few months ago, where it still would have been late, but probably a little bit more appropriate. So we spent a few months trying to pull together all of the third-party licensing for every single application for every single agency in the state of Oklahoma. And it became clear I wasn't going to get it done. And it was actually pretty clear that I was going to miss some stuff too. And so rather than show you a number today, and then come back and surprise you in October or November when that third-party licensing comes up, we thought, okay, let's back off of this. Let's let the agencies continue to renew those licenses that they've been doing year over year. We'll do it for FY17. But this year, we're going to capture that contract, the cost of it, so we can roll it into the FY18 total cost of ownership line. So nothing really changes for you this year in terms of the third-party licensing. But as we go through the renewal process, we're going to capture the cost, and we're going to migrate that contract to be managed by the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. This gives us the appropriate level of visibility, allows us to build the cost into the total cost of ownership, but then also I can start leveraging economies of scale better than I've done in the past and start applying where we have similarities between agencies, start applying those licenses across the board. Tech projects, we've kind of talked this through pretty good. Again, it's going to be what you expect. There'll be a statement of work. It'll be either hours-based or deliverables-based, and it will be billed based on actuals in arrears. The thing that's a little bit different here is enhancements. So we talk about enhancements as being those baby projects, those little bitty things that just need to be done. They typically have a very quick turnaround time, because most of them come as a result of a legislative change. So those things, we've given you a forecast for most of you. If we manage your applications today, you will see in your FY17 proposal a line that says enhancements, an estimated number of hours, and an estimate cost. Said estimate like 3 or 4 times now, right? This is our best guess at this, and it's based on historical information where our staff have been reporting their time over the last few years. But if it looks high to you, we'll change it. If it looks low to you, we'll change it. The idea is we're giving you that cost so that we can put a PO in place up front so that when we do have a quick turnaround kind of thing, we're not waiting on a procurement process to happen. Again, we're billing actuals. So just as you use it, will you receive a bill from us in arrears. A few items of note. So many of you have seen PeopleSoft transactions year over year. You're not going to see them anymore. We changed the name. They're now enterprise resource planning transactions. You'll see them listed as financials, and you'll actually see them listed as human capital management. Financials transactions have been the same since PeopleSoft was implemented in 2003. They have not been trued up in 13 years, even though the expectation was set that they would be trued up every year. They've been trued up this year. We've also tried to simplify it as well. So when you see your proposal, you're going to see unit counts instead of actual transaction counts. So 1 unit equals 500 transactions. And they're just 5 blocks of 500 transactions is how you'll see them on the proposal. Human capital management transactions. These are costs that have never been passed on to the agencies in the past. These are new costs. This is for the licenses that support HCM, PeopleSoft HCM, and of course all the infrastructure costs that HCM sits on. We're going to show them to you for FY17. You will not be billed for them in 17. You will be billed for them in 18. So we're trying to get ahead of this a little bit and make sure that as we have changes, we're talking to you with enough advance notice that you can make adjustments and get them into the budget cycle. All of you have MSAs in place already with the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. Those MSAs, Master Services Agreements, sorry, breaking out jargon already. Master Services Agreements include a clause that basically says they're in place until they're superseded by another agreement. Please continue to pay us as you get your invoices. Lean and mean, cost recovery organization, payroll should not be exciting. Please continue to pay us until we get our FY17s in place. I fully expect we're going to get all the FY17s in place by the end of this month, so this is probably a moot point. But the MSAs will be effective the first day of the month in which they're executed. So if we sign the MSA in July 20th, it'll be effective July 1. That's just easier, it's cleaner. We don't have to try to figure out how to prorate last year to this year based on days or hours or ugh. Let's make it easy. I'm going to show you public safety and compliance. They're Tech Plus items here because I'm excited about it. And then Windows Server 2003. This is an area that's really not done yet. I mentioned that Microsoft more than doubled the cost this year. Before I approach you about additional costs for servers that support your applications, I want to make sure that we're right. I want to make sure the data is exactly right. And so in a couple of weeks, we're going to come back and talk about Windows Server 2003 if it applies to your agency. So that's the bad news, right? There's additional costs that we can't tell you quite yet. The good news is, as part of the renewal this year, we negotiated with Microsoft to include additional professional services hours to get us off of Windows 2003. So as we come talk about the additional costs, we're going to talk about standing up projects to get you off of Windows 2003 so those costs do not continue into FY18. It's a little bit of good news there. Last thing on this slide. Rates are going to be reviewed annually. Again, if we're trying to put good business practices in place, we can't go another decade without looking at our rates. Please do not interpret this as rates are going to increase year over year. Some rates probably will, just to be completely upfront with you. That's the industry trend. But again, we are still charged with reducing costs, leveraging economies of scale, and being more efficient in how we're using assets across the state. So where we may see some rates increase, I think we're going to see others decrease. And the hope is that they will offset each other. Obviously, I can't commit that there will be no rate increases. What we will commit to you is we're going to start having these conversations well in advance so you can prepare for them. FY17, we're not meeting your expectations. We're in the second week of the fiscal year already, and we're just now talking about the costs. As soon as we're done with FY17 conversations, we're going to come back and start talking about 18. So within the next 60 days, we're going to start talking about your FY18 MSAs. That's what a good partner does, right? I can't continue to surprise you with things. We're going to do that. That's our commitment today, is we're going to come back and start talking about 18 very quickly so that if there are things you need to adjust for, you can do that within the budget cycle that's about to start. And you can include those types of things in your October 1 budget submittal. Public safety and defense, security and compliance. So this is a cool thing that's going on right now. There was a bill passed, House Bill 1083, passed session last, I guess that was 2015, that created the Criminal Justice Information Center for Excellence. Through our partnership with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, we've identified a facility in Edmond that meets CJIS requirements already, and we're building a data center in there to unify all of law enforcement systems into that facility. Very cool stuff, but has additional technology requirements. I'm showing everyone this just so you'll see that we have some additional capabilities that we haven't had in the past. Some of you probably don't care, but some of you at some point may need multi-factor authentication. Some of you may need systems designed to high availability. These are things that we're doing for law enforcement now that typically have not been done in the state of Oklahoma before. One, because it's very expensive to design high availability systems. You've got to build in a lot of redundancy, but then also it requires a completely different skill set than most agencies had on hand. So why are we designing to that level now? Law enforcement, almost every system that we support for law enforcement, and I'll pick on emergency management too, every system that we support for that has life safety implications. We need to be designing to that level because it impacts people's lives directly. So very cool things that are happening as a result of some of that legislation. So hopefully you're picking up on the trend here. We want the agencies to get back in control of their IT investments. We need to be able to have business conversations with the agencies around where they're investing and what their options are so that they can get the most value out of those investments year over year. I've done a couple of dozen of these conversations so far this week. I've had agencies that have seen dramatic cost increases and decreases. Dramatic's probably a little dramatic. But regardless, I get the same question back. How do I continue to reduce my costs? It's almost like we had some sort of a budget issue this year. So I've got a few bullets on the slide here that talk about how we can immediately start that conversation. So right off the bat, you're going to see Tech Plus items on your proposal for FY17. These are things that we've just carried over from previous years. As you better understand what's included in Tech Essentials, you may not need those things. Real easy just to line those things out, reduce costs. The second area where there's an easy cost savings is around storage consumption. We've not consistently charged for storage in the past. We've trued that up this year. Because we weren't really charging for storage, there was unbridled consumption, right? If it's free, well, just store everything out there. And we're in a situation where most agencies are storing everything forever. We want to make sure that we're looking at the records retention policies for agencies, and we're going to work with you on this. And we're only storing things that need to be stored. And even things that fit within the records retention policy for your agency, we should really be looking at the different classifications of data. So stuff that's just being archived just because you have to have it for 7 years, let's move that to cheap storage. Let's not put it on the high performance stuff. The high performance stuff should be things that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. So let's make sure that we're taking that into consideration. Your IT strategist will help you with that. And then the last two bullets on this slide are really about conversations, right? Now that we're going to start showing you application by application what the total cost of ownership is, we can start those business conversations around, is this really where you want to invest in IT? Again, your strategist is the best point of contact for those conversations. But even past that, as we mature as an organization, we're constantly rolling out new services. Your account executive is the best person to talk through those services with. They are the expert on our service catalog, and they have tremendous visibility into the roadmap for new services as we're rolling those things out. They also are intimately familiar with your master services agreement. There we go. So some quick reminders before we break up into our small groups. If something's broken, please contact the service desk. That is the fastest way to get things fixed. If you have questions around your master services agreement or billing, contact your account executive. Again, they are the experts on what we offer, and they're intimately familiar with your master services agreement. Everything else goes to your IT strategist. So we haven't done a good job of communicating out what we've done over the last year in terms of the team we've stood up around each agency. We actually have a team of IT professionals for each agency now. I've mentioned some of the roles, the IT strategist, the account executive. You also have technical account managers that are responsible for monitoring your cases and ensuring that they're being met timely. We have program managers that are responsible for all new work that we do to support your agency, and then the executive sponsors, of course. All of these individuals and their contact information is out on the CIO website. There's the link to it right here. But at that website, you can see there's a link you can click on information, partnering with information services. And you'll see a full list of every single agency in the state of Oklahoma, their status in the unification process, who their executive sponsor is, who their IT strategist is, their account executive, their TAM, program manager, all of that is out there. Again, we've been charged with making agencies successful. Secretary Dorflinger has been very clear that we want to ensure we're doing everything to make you successful in meeting your mission, and this team has been charged with that as well. Past that, my contact information is here as well. And there's a number of people here that can serve as escalation points for you. If you ever feel like something doesn't feel right, doesn't look right, or something just needs to be escalated in general because there's some urgency around it, please feel free to reach out to me. Please feel free to reach out to Bo. Again, we want to ensure we're doing everything we can do to make you successful in meeting your mission. specifically around technology, but we want to help in other areas too. So I appreciate your patience as we walk through what we think the rate model is moving forward. We're going to break up into our small groups at this point and actually show you a crosswalk between what FY16 looked like for your agency and what FY17 we think looks like for your agency. And we'll actually start having some of these total cost of ownership conversations right now.